It's time for our first episode of Wonderkid to Superstar of the Year, the series where we find a Wonderkid in FM, put them to the highest end of their potential range to see just how good they might become in your saves. And we have a gem for you today, but stick with us because he's not just a guaranteed amazing player. We're going to show you how you can change his role, how you might be able to train him to get the best out of him. So we'll get right into it in a second, but first we want you guys to comment down below which Wonderkid to Superstar you want to see next. Who do you want us to highlight in a single video to see how good they can become? And on top of that, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel as we'll be doing weekly Wonderkid to Superstar episodes. And on top of that, like the video if you haven't already, just to give us a little bit of a boost here on YouTube. But here you go, we are within Football Manager and you'll see we're managing Tottenham. Now normally we manage Real Madrid, find a Wonderkid, use the editor to put them to the highest end of their potential range and use the editor to bring them over to Real to see how they might look in the best case scenario. However, the editor isn't out yet, so we're kind of stuck in that department. Instead, we've kept loading this save until we've got a version of a player that we assume is on the higher end of his potential range, but it's not necessarily guaranteed what you're going to see today is his maximum. Once the full game is out and the editor is released, we'll be able to do more of that, but we'll have to make do for now. But we've got to show you this player as soon as possible. If you go to Spurs and go to their youth team, you will find a youngster by the name of Mikey Moore. Now, he looks promising already, obviously, but you might be surprised and thinking, why have you chosen him as our first Wonderkid to Superstar? Well, he has an insane potential range of 160 to 190, meaning even in the worst case scenario, when you load up your save and the dice is rolled, his potential could fall anywhere in that range, and if it is on the low end, you are still getting a very good elite level player, and on the higher end, you are going to get one of the best players. He actually starts off with some decent attributes for a 15-year-old with 14 vision, 14 technique, 13 first touch and dribbling, decent passing and finishing combined with determination, and whilst his physicals are weak, they will go up a lot over the next few years at least, so that is something to bear in mind. But you can see he's got 5-star potential here as reported by our coaches, and it looks like you'd have to pay 30 odd million pounds to sign him. He is one of the more premium options in the Wonderkids this year. What I think you should do is scout him and see how his career goes at Tottenham, because in a few years you might be able to get him for a cut price deal if Tottenham never really give him a chance. So keep an eye on him, but even if you did have to pay the 30 million, he will easily make that money back with how good he can become. Now, how are we going to make him a world-class player? Well, one, like we say, we've got him on the higher end of that potential range, but two, you will see he's natural as a left-sided player or as a number 10. But saying that, we're actually going to use him as a striker in today's video, which might seem strange because his physicals are quite weak to be an advanced forward, but he's going to develop a lot in those areas over the next few years, or at least that's the hope, and by the time he's 18, 19, we'll hopefully be looking at a completely different player. In terms of his training, we don't do the additional focuses in these videos to try and keep it fair, but if I was doing it, then what I'd suggest you look at is potentially his quickness, try and get his speed up at an early age, or maybe you could focus on his final third ability to get that composure up and that decision making as well. But you want him to be training whatever role you're going to use him. If it is a 10, if it is a left-sided player, if it is a striker, find out the position, find out the role, and then get him training there, because he's 15, so he's got a lot of time now to be moulded into whatever kind of role you want him to be. We've also got him being mentored here as well by Hugo Lloris and Heung-min Son to try and rub their influence off on young Mikey Moore here in the hopes that he develops a better personality, although saying that, he is already fairly determined, and the winger has a lot going for him in the mental department at such a young age. Mentals and technicals are good for a 15-year-old, but his physicals are weak. But now we're going to simulate a few years, see how he looks after a couple years of growth, and then once we've done that, we'll check him out in the prime of his career. So let's fast forward a few years ahead. Okay, so we're here in 2026 with Mikey having aged up to an 18-year-old at this point, so he's still so young in his career, but he is already looking like he's getting some great development, playing up front regularly for this Tottenham team. You can see the 5'7" forward is now natural in that striking position and has begun to develop a lot of the attributes he's going to need to be a success. He has a valuation now of about £80 million. His acceleration, agility, balance, pace and stamina, they've all gone up to another level now for a striker. I did tell you those physicals would develop, and they have done. He's got great vision, great technique and passing. The off-the-ball movement is brilliant for an 18-year-old, the same with his decision-making and his composure. He's still determined, and he's got great first touch, dribbling and finishing. Now, what I have noticed so far in FM, and you're about to see this in FM24, is if you just stick a striker up front and simulate, it used to be that you'd score, a goal a game quite comfortably with any decent level striker. However, this year, it is very different, and it's much harder to do that. I've noticed that in the rebuilds that I do on my own channel as well. No longer am I getting the 60, 70 goal a season strikers. It's more like 20 goals a season for even the best strikers. Maybe that's a tactical thing. Maybe it will change over the course of FM. But right now, that's how it is. If you simulate, which we did in a very standard 4-2-3-1 gegenpressing tactic, without anything special, just Mikey Moore being our striker, you used to get 40, 50 goals with this caliber of player, even when he's not at full growth. However, this year, things are a little bit different, and you will see that by his in-game performances. They're not great, and the goals and the assists aren't great either for a man that's starting up front a hell of a lot. But just bear that in mind. We are simulating here. We're not managing hands-on. If you guys manage hands-on, you'd get a way better result out of him. You're not able to just throw players in at the deep end in the Premier League and see 50 goals a season now. It doesn't work like that. Although saying that, he is a prolific goal scorer for the England under-21 national team. So that shows you, outside of our management, he is able to score quite a few goals. But so far at Tottenham, he hasn't been amazingly good just yet. But the attributes on paper, what you're seeing here is what we're bothered about. Because you guys will be playing hands-on and developing tactics around these players, we're just forcing him to play every single match in a basic tactic without really monitoring how he's doing. But either way, his development is looking great, and this is him not even at the lowest end of that potential range. This is still him in, the mid 130s, 140s current ability, I would have presumed. But now we're going to see him towards the maximum end of that range in the prime of his career in his mid 20s. And it's now 2036, so we're plenty of years in the future, and Mikey is just an exceptional player now. He has definitely got towards the end of that potential range by the looks of his ability. He's considered one of the best players in this Tottenham team, and he looks absolutely phenomenal. Physically, he has developed a hell of a lot to the point where he's extremely agile, quick with his acceleration and pace, great balance. Even his strength is looking good at this age, but mentally, this guy is just, one of the best you'll ever see, really, because his mental starts so good at such a young age. He develops so quickly in those areas mentally, with 18 anticipation, the composure at the same level. Off the ball work and vision at 19 is crazy. 16 passing, 17 technique, 17 first touch, 16 finishing, 17 dribbling. You could go on about Mikey here. He's now a star player at Tottenham, valued at about 80 million with a couple of years left on his deal, wanted by Liverpool and PSG. It's going to be hard to keep him here when he wants to leave. Unfortunately, Tottenham have been doing terrible during the simulation. This is why it's much better to do Real Madrid. Tottenham haven't been doing great at all. Whilst we've been holidaying, they haven't really signed too many players. Their squad's looking weak and they're getting mid-table finishes. And Mikey's performances are semi-reflective of that. Like I said earlier, please don't judge these average match ratings and goals as how good Mikey is. You guys will get 10 times better results than what we're seeing here with hands-on management. We're just forcing Mikey to play and holidaying, which it seems in FM24 doesn't get you any goals anymore the way that it used to. Saying that though, he is still a pretty prolific goal scorer for Spurs and has been for England too, with 19 goals in 41 appearances and 31 in 42 under 21 caps. So even though his in-game performances might not reflect it, he is definitely worth that initial value. Because of those attributes, you guys would get 10 times the performances we're getting here out of him. But let's see how he looks at the end of his career. And I say the end of his career, but it's more like the end of his Spurs career, because he's still going to continue here. The 31-year-old forward has got a move lined up to join PSG at the end of his contract. We're not going to see how that plays out, but I'm sure he'd score more goals than he scored for us. At the age of 31, he's now a 5-star player, and even though I don't trust star ratings too much, that is still reflective of how good he is. Now, he did have his one really good season with 20 goals and 14 assists and a 7.1 average match rating, which is awesome. But the other years, I mean, yeah, if this was FM23, this ability of player in this tactic simulating ahead, you'd be looking at maybe 600 goals in 500 games. He is that good. This time round, though, it's like 200 and 585, which isn't as good, obviously. But this is only our first episode of Wonderkid to Superstar, so hopefully when the full game of FM24 comes out and we get some patches and whatnot, when we holiday ahead, we might see some better results out of these strikers. But if anything, this is a bit more realistic than what we used to have with those strikers that would score 1,000 goals and beat Pele's record easily when they didn't even have that much ability. Mikey Moore, though, has all the ability in the world, so get him signed if you can in your save, scout him, see how he develops. But I want you guys to let us know in the comments who you want to see in the next episode of the series. Thank you guys for watching, like the video if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.